safe space. We ain't never give a reason you should hide. Compile all your questions, we're taking the quest. Join Tarcia on this journey to discover the rest. Go.
Welcome to the Adoption Journey Podcast. I am your host, Tarcia Smith, and welcome back to another story, another journey. Real quick before we get started, I want to remind everybody to go and follow the Black Adoptees Meetup Instagram page. And Black Adoptees Meetup is just a space that myself and Kathy Garland created for Black adoptees to come together and just be. So you can go to blackadopteesmeetup.org. We're meeting up in Chicago this year in the month of October, so go check all that out. We've got some virtual get-togethers coming up. So Black Adoptees Meetup. And then like and subscribe and follow the Adoption Journey Podcast. Y'all been forgetting, because I see. Go do that too. So we got all that out of the way. I am super excited to have Angie in the building. She's a fellow adoptee, and she is going to tell her story. Hey, Angie.
Hey everybody. Thank you so much for having me. It is such an honor. And, we are part of a very, very special club, aren't we?
Listen, being Black and adopted is a whole thing all by itself.
I consider myself God's favorite. I feel very, very blessed. And I know that it doesn't happen for everybody. I know that this process can be so complicated, and even my own situation has its own, challenges and diversities. But at the end of the day, we made it here on Earth and are getting to experience something that is so unique that, to the human experience, that it really is an honor
Absolutely.
To stand out.
I never thought about it like that, but you are on point. Yeah. To stand out, stand on this earth, and then tell our story. For sure.
And tell our story,
Yeah.
And this is what I love about adoptees, is that we all have these different stories, and specifically mine, I believe it's actually part of my purpose in life. And I truly believe from the moment that I was born, there was purpose that pretty much lit my path. Oof. And I mean that by, I was born in the 80s. I was born in 84, and medical assistance and needs were still very experimental. Everything was still a little bit shaky. And September 4th, 1984, my mother had delivered me 2 months premature, and she was a Haitian immigrant. So I was actually born, it's, very well known that a lot of the immigrants would try to have children in the US, right, so that they could keep their citizenship.
Right.
So where were you born? Today.
Oh, girl. Very much so. Where were you born?
And so I was born in Miami, and I was born at this hospital called Jackson Memorial in Dade County.
Okay.
And Jackson Memorial specifically is one of the best hospitals in the world, but it actually has one of the best NICU units ever. Ever.
Okay.
And so by chance, or not even by chance, by the grace,
by design,
you know what I mean? My mother got a little instinct, and she's like, something's not right. I'm going to go to the hospital. I was delivered 2 months early. I had died twice within the first 24 hours I was born. And if you're, you have to live your life with purpose when it starts off that way.
Come on.
Because think about, even as a baby, I was fighting for my life. Even as a baby, people were fighting for my life. You know what I mean? I wasn't just a number at that point.
Yeah.
They didn't stop at one. They were determined. And so I was born at the right hospital at the right time. And I weighed about 3 pounds. I was as big as the palm of your hand.
Yeah.
That's
tiny.
That is scary.
Yeah.
All tubed up, sick, barely making it, barely breathing. And I caught a really terrible infection from my birth mother. And so she only had one option. She really only had one option from the beginning. And it was to give me up to the state. If she had taken me home, if she had tried to, and she lived in Little Haiti in Miami. And if y'all don't know,
I know. Been there.
Little
I
Haiti
know.
in Miami, it is not the place. It's not the
Not
spot.
at all. Go in the day. Pass by in the daytime.
Yeah. And you're still, but
yeah.
but at the end of the day, they were like, if you take her, she is, it's not if, she is gonna die. And she was like, she put her ego aside. I mean, this woman.
So hold on, I have a question.
Yeah.
So they're telling her, well, did she already know that she was going to give you up, or did she give you up because you were a preemie?
She gave me up because my medical capacity was going to be too much for her.
Wow. Okay.
She wouldn't have been able to. So I had a colostomy. Do you know what that is?
Yes, but you can explain it to the people.
And so I had a colostomy where my intestines were actually outside of my body. Mm-hmm. And this isn't common, but it's common. But it's definitely not common for a baby in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And so with this process, with this type of situation, medical condition, you pretty much have to empty a bag of bodily waste often.
Right.
And so if you don't, you can imagine sickness, more disease, more infection. It really has to be very taken care of. And so they were like, you have to be honest with yourself. And she knew. I think she understood, but
now was it because of the cost of the medical care that you would need, and she knew she couldn't afford it?
It was all of it.
All of that.
By the time that I left that hospital, she kept all of my original medical bills. And in the 80s, I was at almost $200,000 in the 80s.
You know a whole lot about your birth being an adoptee, and I can't wait to find out why. But keep going.
It is, honestly, and this is why I feel blessed, and in a way that, I think everybody comes exactly how they are to this earth to deliver this message. And I couldn't have been a white male or an Asian woman. I had to be a Black woman in order to deliver this message that my life has created. And it's full of so much strength. My birth mother was pregnant one day and not the next. Yeah. And in the Haitian culture, secrets. Nobody talks about anything.
Girl, that's Black culture too. Sweeping it all under the rug, keep it pushing. Nobody's getting therapy. We're not talking about this no more. You can't even heal or deal with it. You got to keep pushing. Yes, ma'am.
And they pride themselves so much on their children. She loved all of her kids. She wanted these kids, for not just to stay in the United States, but she wanted these kids. And so, it was very, very difficult. And I was her third. I have an older brother who lives in the Dominican, and she couldn't get him to the United States. So he grew up there. Okay. Then she had a child between us that passed away. Okay. Then I came, and I barely made it, and she still didn't come home with me. And then I have a younger sister who ended up with her. So at this point, the doctors were like, you can't do it. Cost, the bills, the medical assistance that she would need, it would be impossible. So she signed the dotted line. She saved my life. She was the next person to save my life. Okay. And so she did the right thing, and she had rights to see me. And I'm this incredibly fragile child in the NICU with a ton of medical needs. And one of the NICU nurses says, give me that one. I'm taking that one. I'm going to be the one to give that one a chance. Because she was a NICU nurse. She knew all about these babies. And do you know how many babies? I mean, that was her profession. Do you know how many babies she has loved and saved, and none of them she brought home?
Wow. So the NICU nurse.
So her name was Mary Ellen Smith.
Okay.
She was a saint. She had 2 kids of her own at home, 2 boys at that, a nanny, bunch of pets, living in Miami, Florida, in the suburbs, down a cul-de-sac. You know what I mean? Everybody knew each other. And she's like, yeah, let me take this on.
Was she white or black?
She was white.
Okay.
And she said, let me take this on. And the next 4 months I spent in the NICU, healing, thriving. It was a big joke that I didn't get any sleep because the nurses were just constantly playing with me and like so happy for me that I was thriving. And I went home on December 26th, 1984. The nurses demanded that I be there for Christmas. And I have this incredible picture of me just in my little elf Santa suit. And went home the day after Christmas and began the rest of my life.
Oof.
And it wasn't long until everybody was on board. I was the baby. I was the cute. You know what I mean?
So she has, how old are the boys?
So the boys at this time were 40, 50, about 10, 11, 12 when I was born. So they're about,
much older.
Yes.
And is there a husband in the home, or is it just her and her kids?
Just her kids, and the nanny. She had divorced her husband.
Okay.
And why she has a nanny. And so it's a live-in nanny. And her name is Pamela. And she's very important to the story.
Okay. So you get home and everyone is all about this new little beautiful baby girl that has thrived, survived. And do you know at this point, is there any communication going on with your birth mother?
Absolutely. And so she had rights to see me, and she was seeing me every week. And they didn't, deny that. I was a foster child still, there are still processes that you have to take. And it's not like they, owned me. It was the fact that she still had rights.
So, now I have another question.
Yeah.
Being that she's nursed you back to health, your birth mom still has rights. And I know as a preemie, there's probably some medical stuff, but not as severe as like when you were first born. At that point, does your mother, because, when you're foster care, you could still go back. So at that point, your mother still doesn't.
Because I still had to have, that medical care that I need, that specific. Kind of round the clock.
Gotcha.
Care would have made it impossible no matter what.
Gotcha.
And then, eventually I would have needed a reverse surgery, which,
Yeah.
And so everything happens for a reason. And this is why
I believe that.
Life is so funny, and I don't take any second for granted, the good, the bad, because you just don't know why it's happening yet.
Yeah.
And so she had rights. We saw each other, enough. And in 85, Mary Ellen, the nurse, did decide that she wanted to make it official. She wanted me a part of her family. Now we have to remember that they were getting a nice little check for being my foster mom.
Sure.
She had no real reason to give this up. There was no benefit other than just being a family. And so she was like, no, this is official. We don't have to wait. Let's get it rolling. And I think at that time as well, my birth mother stopped the meetings, and the visits. And so she was like, let's make this official. And so in 1985, in Miami, Florida, it was illegal for a white family to adopt a Black child.
Huh. I did not know
And
that.
so when, and there are so many interesting aspects to that. And I really didn't catch on to it until I was older, like 30s, honestly, because like the magnitude of that, and why it was caused and such. But they fought, and they could not win, to the point where then they decided, well, to heck with it, we're going to move. Like, we're going to move to a state that's going to actually allow us to adopt you. This is pre-internet, y'all.
I did not know that. Let me tell you, because I live in Florida. I'm in Orlando. So I'm in the state. I did not know that. In 85, that's like real recent.
Don't get me up until the early 90s, because we didn't leave for another 4 or 5 years.
So
we didn't leave
do you
Florida.
know what the law, like, why? What did
Segregation.
They say? Still, okay.
100%. And 100%, because it wasn't illegal for white people to adopt. It was illegal for them to adopt a Black child. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And so you have to think about my family now in the 80s doing everything against the grain. Everything against the grain.
So, okay.
No questions asked.
Now you're into the 90s when they decide to leave. And so you're a little older. And go ahead.
So I'm at around 4 years old, we moved to Connecticut and pack up our van, head on up. We have family up here, and we land in a cute little town called Hamden, Connecticut.
Oh,
now,
wait a minute. Hold
on. Yes.
Before we get to Connecticut.
Okay.
Now, because you're 4. And I know now, okay, so you're Black, they're white.
Yeah.
Are they any conversation about your birth mom? Any type of conversation? Okay, so those things are happening
all the time.
Okay.
And let me tell you, they were the first ones to call me Haitian American. I've never called myself African American. My family made it very clear that I was Haitian American. I've never known anything other than that. I thought that was correct. And so when people called me African American, I mean, I didn't care because I understood what they were referencing.
Yeah.
But when I reference myself, I would often correct people and be like, actually, I'm Haitian American, because I was so proud of my story. My family always told me, yeah, you're adopted and da-da-da-da, and your mother loved you and didn't want to give you up. And, here's a great story. So I was a baby, and they were like, well, my family has property in Maine. So every summer we would go to Maine. So they have this new baby. They got clearance to take me to Maine, and we're at the airport. And somehow, some way, my birth mother found out the flight. When they were leaving, she showed up at the airport and just watched her child, be taken on a plane, not knowing why,
Wow.
And like she figured it out somehow. Again, pre-internet. And they would tell me that story, and I'd be like, wow, like she really did not want that. Like she was locked in. We were locked in.
Do you know how far away she lived? I know she's in Little Haiti, versus
No, but I
where
would
you don't
assume,
know.
15,
Yeah.
20
So she's
minutes.
not far. She's in the
No, because they
vicinity.
were both in Miami. We
Right,
were all
right,
in Miami,
right.
minus traffic and things like that.
Girl, that traffic is
Um,
horrible. That's another podcast. That traffic's so bad down there.
it's so bad.
So
It's
bad.
so bad.
Okay, so
But,
now you've moved to Connecticut. You're about 4 years
yeah,
old.
yep.
And are you still
And
in? Because the way you described your space, and I know you were very, very, very small, but it sounds like you're going to one quote unquote white space to another quote unquote white space. Whereas in Miami, you've got access to that Haitian culture. But in Connecticut, what does that look like?
and so Connecticut is a lot more diverse than a lot of people think,
Okay,
Yeah, 100%. Oh, we have
okay,
Haitians, Jamaicans. Yeah, we have Bridgeport, Hartford, Stanford, New Britain. I mean, it has a very decent diversity for Connecticut, but not where I grew up. And we'll get to that. But the whole amazing part is that Connecticut allowed interracial adoptions. As stuffy and as white and as whatever,
yeah.
they were cool with it.
Wow.
No
They had to go to
problem. Like it
another
was no
state.
problem. But this is how magical life works.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I mentioned, I still needed a reverse surgery. And so at this point, she's still my foster mom. And the state still owns me. So it is their responsibility for this surgery. And so I'm at the best hospital, Yale, arguably in the United States,
Right.
absolutely, in New England. I have the best care. And this doctor, Dr. Teddy Bear, never forget him. I was like his
Dr. Teddy
second
Bear.
or right. They're so good. I'll never forget it. It created such a mark on me. And I was like maybe his third child he's ever done this surgery on. And not because he wasn't inexperienced, but because children weren't getting
Right,
this issue, this
right.
condition. And so I had again another chance at not waking up the next day.
Mm.
And 100% chance of having to learn how to do everything all over. Learning how to walk again,
Wow.
learning how to use the bathroom differently. You know what I mean? Everything changed. And so it was the first time I saw my mom cry. Now, here's what happened. We moved to Hamden, and I had really gotten attached to the nanny
Mm.
because she was around
All the
all the
time.
time.
Yeah.
And throughout these years, and she didn't have any children. She
Okay.
was at this point about 54. Family all lived in England. She was literally an English nanny, but all her family lived in England. She was kind of, she estranged herself. And her and Mary Ellen were like, we shouldn't separate this bond. This is a special bond. So, in the whole mix, they then decided that the nanny was going to adopt me.
Wait. Wait. I wasn't ready for that sharp left turn. You didn't tell me to put my seatbelt on. You didn't tell me.
We're not even, we're not even.
What? Okay. So then, what happened?
And so one of my two brothers, was also adopted by
Huh.
the nurse. And she was, but he wasn't, she wasn't, it was a different scenario.
Sure.
Um, And he had a few issues from his previous mother,
Okay.
who did a lot of drugs.
Okay.
And so by the time that they were teenagers, he was a teenager, the safety of the family was then taken into consideration. And so it also wasn't just this happenstance of, we don't want to break your bond between, you two. It was also, we want her to be safe, And although my brother loved me dearly, we were the closest.
Okay.
He just wasn't able to figure out. I mean, you're 14 years old with all these emotions, and then you have these other issues. So
right. 14 is hard all by itself. Yeah.
And you just moved, essentially. You're not fitting in right. We don't know what autism is at this point either.
Yeah. We're in the early 90s right now. Yeah. It doesn't have a name.
And when you are that troubled in the 90s, those places that they went weren't good. They weren't regulated properly. So, again, this is why when we plan, God laughs.
I just said that yesterday to somebody. I literally just said that to somebody yesterday.
Because we don't, nobody could have predicted this.
That.
And so in March of 1991, Pamela A. Legg, the nanny, signed the papers, and I went from Angie Telemaque, which was my birth name, to Angela Helen Legg. And so identity has been so fluid for me my whole life that I'm constantly challenging the status quo, constantly on everything. And, it started I look back and I'm like, yeah, I even changed my whole name. There's nothing, I don't know anybody else who had that, me personally. And I know kids who were adopted and still didn't carry their birth name for 6 years and then switch to, and I'm just thankful that my mom, so I'm going to refer to my adopted mom as my mom moving forward, but I was so thankful because my mom's best friend was named Angela, and she just kind of kept, it in the same genre, which was nice.
So
later
you
on,
were Angie.
Yep.
And they changed it to Angela.
Telemaque, correct.
And then gave you a middle name.
And then gave me my grandmother's middle name, yes.
Okay. So at 6, changing your name from Angie to now Angela. I always struggle with that when kids are old enough to know their name and then get their name changed. And while yours was a variation of your name, so that helps. It wasn't like going from Angie to Pauline. But
no,
do you remember? It was just like, okay, this is what they.
Because I was called Angie as a nickname, and it didn't register. And when it came to my last name, I couldn't have been more excited because Telemaque is very. You already know it's 12 characters long. It's nobody can pronounce it.
Like, cool.
Yeah,
got it.
Yes. I had this best friend, and her name was Kelly Gilmore. And when I got my name changed, we raced to see who could spell their last name the fastest. And that's a core memory.
Yeah.
I had a great transition into that, And
so with the last name I get, I don't so much struggle with that. It's always the first name and I wonder if it's confusing for the child. But in this case, you're just like, oh, so my name is Angela, but y'all call me Angie for short. Got it.
Yeah.
So talk to me about Now you're in Connecticut. These changes have happened. You're now a leg,
And I'm
and
healthy.
it,
And I'm healthy and I'm cured and I'm fine.
oh, well, come on, God, look at God, won't
My
He do it?
surgery went.
Amazing and done. So she was the nanny. So does she still live in the house, or does she have her own?
And so
Okay,
1991 and then around 94, um it was time for everybody to move out. My brother, who was having some issues, got to a point where it really just wasn't a place for me and my mom. And the kids were grown as well. They were teenagers. So, they were driving, and Mary Ellen didn't need a nanny, and it was just time. And so it was time for my mom to look for a new nanny job. That was her life. That's all she knew.
okay.
And she was a prestigious nanny. She worked for nothing but doctors, nurses,
I
lawyers.
just envision Mary Poppins. You
It,
just
it, let me
that's what she
tell
sounds like to
you,
me.
she was more like Mrs. Doubtfire
Oh,
without but the Poppins like persona.
persona. Okay,
But the
Mrs. Doubtfire
Doubtfire,
was fun.
yeah, right, yes, exactly. Pam, mm-mm. Pam raised too many damn kids to be like letting stuff go. She was like, no, y'all
No.
are stupid. Y'all need to. So yeah, it was time for her to find a new job. And I went on all the interviews with her. She literally picked up a newspaper, you know what I mean? And she went to like an agency as well.
Okay.
And so what happened was, between the two, we went on a bunch of different interviews. And I remember going on one particular interview and the house smelled. And I didn't like the lady and I didn't really like the little kid. But there wasn't a lot of families who were going to accept an elderly nanny and a child to live in. You know what I mean? Like that's a very, let alone odd. Like there's so many odd things about that. And so there wasn't that many opportunities, but there is this single father with 4 boys who lived in a town called Guilford, Connecticut, the burbs, right on the water. You know what I mean? Beautiful town. And we went, we're pretty much in the woods, not like honky tonk, but we're in the woods.
Okay.
And there's like a horse farm right next to the house and a lake across the street. It was very picturesque.
Okay.
And it was this 1700s red house, just beautiful, big yard with an apple tree in the front. And they had a main house and then they had a guest suite divided by, a tunnel. And so I stayed in the car and she went in to speak to Mr. Taddy, is what his name was, Ernie Taddy. And finally, they were chatting and I was watching the boys kind of check out the car and check me out. And they're looking in the window, they're climbing the tree. And they finally, Mr. Taddy was finally like, why don't you, bring her in? Let's all meet. And we all met and he was like, yeah, I've gone through like 4 nannies with these boys. He's like, I think you can do it. And he's like, and bring her because they need a sister. You know what I mean? And so again, like you can't plan like this. You can't plan it. You can't. There's no diary.
I have a
entry.
question. Okay.
Yeah.
So do you happen to, why did she leave you in the car to begin?
Because I was shy. It was a beautiful day out, and she wanted to meet him, and I was just being shy, and I just wanted to stay in the car and listen to music.
Okay.
I'm like,
You didn't want to go in.
9 years
Okay.
old. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm like, I'm don't know that. And my experience prior was meeting a smelly woman and a child I didn't like. Like
You're like, I'm
I
good.
didn't want, yeah. And I didn't know what I was getting myself into. So I
Okay.
was like, no, just leave me here, Mom.
So you
And
move in with this.
And so I moved from Hamden, which is semi-diverse, where there was definitely a whole mix of kids, everything, to a predominantly white town. And
Now,
I
in
didn't,
in all this, hold on. Now, you've gone from, you know, the nanny adopts you.
yep.
Are you losing your Haitian culture? Are you being exposed to anything through this time, up to this point?
No, how could they?
Okay.
There was no internet. You know,
Okay.
there was very little access, and to be honest, nobody wanted to help them. They thought it was weird. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
More people were upset
Mm,
than they were helpful from
mm.
both sides. And they shielded that from me because I had no clue growing up.
Yeah, you're
I had no clue.
very sheltered.
You
Let me ask
know?
you another question because it just dawned on me. Your hair. How was she
Oh.
about taking care of your hair?
So it was, just tight to my head for so long. It would grow so fast and they wouldn't know what to do with it. So they did end up taking me to a black salon when
Okay.
I was in grade school, second, third grade, and she relaxed it. Like a lot of young kids, which she
Sure.
shouldn't have done, you know what I mean? Unfortunately, I know. But they did correct. They did the right thing. They didn't try and mess with it themselves, and they
Absolutely.
they took the advice of a professional in
And
the
again, at this
culture.
time, there's not a lot out there, pre-internet, there's not a lot of resources. So they did what they knew to do in that space and that time. And like you said, at
Absolutely.
least they did something because some people do
No, they did a lot
nothing.
because like
So
they didn't have to do anything.
anything.
My
I get it.
my aunt. So I ended up calling Mary Ellen my aunt,
Okay.
and I ended up calling her two sons my brothers. And so, my aunt didn't have to take me home. My
Right.
aunt didn't have to foster me. My aunt
Right.
didn't have to keep going, didn't have to keep fighting the fight. She also didn't have to take on the criticism that she was going to get everywhere she went. We
Everywhere
lived
she
in
went.
Miami and
Yeah.
we went to Publix, a black baby. And like, granted, I was also an ashy baby. This was
Ah,
all new. Girl, you should see these pictures. I was
they
I the
didn't know.
I was they didn't know. They
They
didn't
didn't know.
know. But I would take that all day
Yeah.
for the love that they gave me. Because I'm going to tell you right now, and as we continue the story, it did not work out for my biological sister. It did, but it didn't. But I wouldn't trade places with her,
I hear
not for
that.
even a second.
I hear that. So
So,
we're back in with the beautiful
the
apple
suburbs.
tree in the suburbs.
We're back in the suburbs, and I'm not unfamiliar with it. So I was comfortable, and my family was white. So I didn't this was so normal to me.
Mm-hmm.
I it
Mm-hmm.
just, and I was still surrounded by ethnicities. I lived in Miami. We moved to a city, and so I was just like, all right, this is just what happens. And so had a great life, grew up, one of the very few black children, but absolutely the only black child with a white mom,
Sure.
and no dad. I mean, it just, kept going, but it was so unique that I used it as my superpower, and I still do.
Mm,
And they always kind of not taught me to do it, but I was always proud of who I was,
yeah.
and got into grade school, didn't want to be the only, didn't want to be labeled as the black girl. um and I don't know why I understood that as a child,
Yeah.
but that's just, what happened, because I was never labeled as the Black girl because I was around other Black girls. So I don't know where exactly it came from, but it was obvious to me. And then I was just like, okay, what can I do to stand out? And I started using fashion as my scapegoat. And I started wearing two different colored socks for about 2 years. From fifth grade to seventh grade, I was strategically trying to
Stand out.
muster up a different icebreaker. Yeah. That would draw less attention to the color of my skin and to who I was, because that's how I was raised.
That's
I was raised
amazing
on
that you were thinking like that young.
but it's because I was just so proud of who I was and loved.
Like, you're going to get to know me past
Because
everything.
that's what my family did for me. They
Yeah.
didn't care. They just got to know me from me, and I didn't experience, racism consciously until way later, way later, and it was a lot less than I feel people think it is. And I'm going to be so honest, and it is probably the most unpopular opinion, but the racism that I got stemmed from our culture.
Oh,
Because
yeah. I absolutely can see that.
And so it was like confusing, and so I
You
I was
landed in
in the,
spaces, especially as you got older, you're not Black enough.
and what I realized literally in the last 2 years, and someone, on the internet said something that just made me click, was the fact that a lot of the culture doesn't like the fact that I'm privileged, because privilege is associated with white, but there are so many privileged Black people in this world. You know what I mean? And
I
I'm
know
like,
what you mean. Because
privilege
I lived
is,
that life myself. So I know, and I am the same race Black adoptee.
oh, okay.
So I understand. I get it. So
And
yeah,
I'm
we
like,
exist. Now we don't flaunt it and da 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 da, but we exist. We understand when we go into the world and be like, just like what you just said. Because I know my birth parent, their story. I wouldn't trade places with them for anything. For that reason, I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm with you.
and it's just like, and I'm sorry, and I knew this when I was 16, because I would hang out in the ghetto too. I
Yeah,
loved it. I'm like,
absolutely.
it didn't
We
matter,
need a little bit of hood exposure.
and
Yeah.
so when I went, though, I heard how they talked about the burbs, and they wanted to live there,
Oh, yeah.
and they wanted it. And when I realized that, I was like, oh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and at that point, I'm still 16. I'm trying to figure it out, but I'm like, it's funny how you treat me like that, but then you say this
Yeah.
that makes you want to be where I'm at. Yeah, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'll put that
It's an
together
interesting
later on
conversation. It's
in
an
life.
interesting dynamic in conversation that you have to be within. I believe you got to be within the culture to get it, to really understand it, because it's a thing amongst us. It is. It's a
It
thing. Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
It is, and I understand why it's a thing, but that is part of the problem a little bit. So, like, I wasn't raised to rely on anyone or anything. Like, when we look at the conversations around affirmative action and DEI, I'm like, I've never used DEI. I'm like, everything that I've done and accomplished was because of me.
I'm going to go a step further and say I believe, in personal opinion, most Black people have not, most of us have worked for and are where we are because we work. The conversation today is very murky because it's not that.
I
And I'm gonna
mean,
let y'all sit in that and stew in that, and y'all can. But yeah, I know several. We're all educated. We're all smart. We're all accomplished. We're all do all the things.
we go on
We
vacation, we rent
listen,
cars, we have
listen. We
bank
own
accounts,
homes.
we
We do all
invest.
the
We
right. So,
what can't what
woo,
what's stopping? So
yeah.
I
So I
never
think
so
so the conversation, like, I get the conversation, but I just believe there's a lot of us that we don't stand on those shoulders like they think we do.
well, and
We
and for
don't.
some
And
people
for
it
some
is
people, it
real for
needs to,
them.
right. And for some people, but I can only speak from where I stand and the people that I know in my circle. We standing on our own shoulders.
100%.
Yeah. So
And
I get that. And then when you are raised like that, and that's what's instilled in you, and you watch your parent or whomever having done the same thing, whether they be white or black, it instills something in you like, oh, I got to stand up on my
yeah,
own too and make this happen in this world. Even if I might have to be two times more, I'm still, it's still me. Girl, we're going to come on back to your adoption story.
but it's all because it's what made us who we are and allows us to speak this clarity
Yeah.
now as the women that we needed when we were young, to guide us. But we're here.
Phew.
We made it.
We made it.
And,
So I wanna turn the corner
yeah.
because now you're growing up. This is your environment. Like, we're super
Yeah.
clear on your environment.
Yeah.
And I want to know, at what point do you make that transition to how does your birth mother come back into the picture?
So I graduate high school, go on to college. I'm not a college, I'm a life learner, but I'm not a college person. And so I went on to study all sorts of things: massage therapy, interior design, architecture. And I was at the time
You're creative.
studying 100%. And this
Mhm.
all makes sense too as we move forward. It's insane. It's insane because despite, and I'm curious to know if you've ever run into this, despite being separated from my family from the very beginning, my bloodline is so, my ancestry lives within me to the point when I was 6 and I was just learning, coming into kindergarten, I had a speech impediment because I was speaking Creole. The way I was
Huh.
pronouncing words was how you speak Creole. And I still have trouble with my R's and my W's because in Creole we'll say, like, to say I is mwen. So
Okay.
I had trouble, never was around the language, but still my gene pool. And then you'll find out later how my creative side got,
I've ex-
flourished.
I've
Yeah.
experienced that in my gene pool with the creative side. I now know where it comes from, and it runs deep in my veins. So yes, I've experienced that. But you
Isn't
gotta,
that
but you
incredible?
gotta know, and some a lot of us are fortunate enough to have been able to find and then find out, or in your case, there was some kind of communication, and so yes, it runs deep in my veins, that creative side.
And
Hmm.
so, I the creativity was happening and I ended up in sales. Always was in sales, but I ended up getting into interior design sales and construction sales. And one day I was working, I had just moved out. I was 23 years old. I just moved out of the house. My mom was moving. I was moving to Norwalk. I was starting my exciting life. And we separated and got this new job. And about 2 months later, so I moved in December of 2007.
Okay.
And in February, specifically February 2nd of 2008, I get this phone call. I got home from a long day at work Saturday, and I get this phone call from this Boston number. And I'm like, bill collector. So
Right.
I'm like, not today. Not today, Satan. And so called back. And I'm like, I know I'm not like, so I sent it a voice, called back. Hello? Hi, is this Angie Legg? Like, yes, who's this? Your sister. Now, I had a stepsister I didn't mention in the story. Mary Ellen, the nurse, she was divorced. She had a stepdaughter that really wasn't around a whole lot.
Okay.
So I don't bring her up really too often.
Okay.
But she had passed away that following year. And so I'm sitting here and I'm like, what
Wait, who
is
had
going
passed
on?
away?
My stepsister.
Okay.
And so the reason why I say that is because this woman on the phone is saying she's my sister, but the only sister in my head
is
that I know of has already passed away, like tragically. I'm like, what is going on? And she was like, you were born Angie Telemock, September 4th, 1984.
Ooh. And they start giving you your life.
I swear. And she was like, your social security is da-da-da. I'm like, because that's how she felt. And so I'm like, she's like, I'm in Guilford right now. And she had driven from Boston to my Guilford address on a whim on a Saturday afternoon, knocked on the door in hopes somebody was home, stayed there knocking. Now, the family that my mother nannied for, that we moved in with the 4 boys, I consider those 4. I lived with them from the time that I was 9 to the time that I was 23. Those are my brothers as well. Yes, exactly. And so one of my brothers, Frank, who was my age, was sleeping. And he's a hard sleeper, and she was knocking, and she was not giving up. She stayed there for about 30 minutes. And finally, because she heard a dog barking, and so finally he woke up and he opened it and he was just like, can I help you? And she's like, is Angie Legg home? And he's like, no, she just moved like 2 months ago. And she bursts into tears. And he's like, who are you? And she's like, I'm her sister. And he's like, holy crap. He's like, come inside now. He showed her my Facebook page and then gave her my number. And so that's when she called me, and I was like, oh my God. And I'm like, and I'm like, yeah, I'm another 40 minutes away. Can you make the drive? And she was like, yeah, absolutely. So her and her boyfriend at the time drove another 40 minutes, knocked on my door. And on February 2nd, 2008, we were united. And the only reason this worked, again, is because the power that be is unlimited. So my birth mother, I mentioned very early in the conversation that she kept my bills. She literally kept every document that I had, my old Social Security, my bills, a couple other things, in a box for 24 years.
Pause. You just said something, and I know somebody heard it because it hit my ear. Your old Social Security.
Because it had my old name. It's still the same number, but it had Angie.
I just want you to clear that up, because somebody that's not adopted is like, wait, they get new Social Security numbers too? No.
That's
but
true.
The name.
But the name. Exactly. great pickup because I don't think about stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Old Social Security, new Social Security. And she gave my information to my sister at the age of like 16, was like, this is your mission. You have to find your sister. So she spent years looking. And one day she reached out to a private investigator in Miami. And she was like, this is the issue, da 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 da. He's like, well, it's going to cost this much money. She's like, I don't have that, burst into tears. And he's like, I'll do it. I'll do it pro bono. Gave her my Guilford address, my name, my mother's name, everything else she needed. And while living in Guilford, she had called me and left a message on an answering machine. Do you guys know what an answering machine is?
They don't. They don't. Oh. I know.
Y'all are dating me.
Okay. She's talking about the answering machine now. And landlines. I'm sorry. She almost spit out her water.
Landlines. They were connected to the wall.
They were connected to the wall. And you couldn't go, but only so far, unless you were fancy and had a long cord.
But you know what? This is important part of the story because for the people who don't get that cell phones didn't exist.
Yes.
This is the reality. And so she called me when I was living in Guilford. And I had no clue. She left a message. Hi, this is Jennifer Nelson. This message is for Angie Legg. Da, 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 da. And I can hear it right now.
But you had no clue.
But she didn't say I was your sister. I'm like, if you had said that you were my sister,
so you had gotten this message. How long ago was that?
I was in high school.
You were wow.
I was either in because I was living at this house. Yeah, I was in high school. And
so years ago, she had left a message but didn't say who she was. So you were like, that must have been the wrong number, and kept it moving.
Yeah. Delete.
Oh.
And she never really tried again.
Yeah.
Because she thought.
And let me tell y'all, for those that don't know, when you have the answering machine and when you delete it off the tape,
it's gone.
It's gone. It's no retrieving. It's none of that. It's not a thing.
Erased.
Yeah, it's important for the story because there's some people that don't know a world like that. So it's important. Okay, girl, she and the boyfriend.
And so they
come from Miami?
So she was living in Boston now.
So she was living there. Okay.
Correct. Yep. She was in college. She was with this guy, drove down on a Saturday, knocked on the door, then called me, drove another 40 minutes to come see me, knocked on my door. And like to this day, I can see me opening the door and seeing her for the first time. Yeah.
Sure.
And her first words that I recall, because we were just standing there looking at each other and she was just like, I thought I looked like mom.
I was going to say, you must look just like your mom.
Oh my God. And she's like fabulous. And yeah, she was like, she's like, you are a twin. And I'm like, wow.
Because had you ever seen a picture of her? So no pictures. Okay.
And growing up looking so different, I wasn't internalizing it. I never asked my mom, why am I black and you're white? I've never ever said I want to be white. I have never said that. Like, again, that's how well I was raised.
Let me ask you this real quick. This is whole real sidebar.
Yeah.
What about the type of guys that you were attracted to? Were they white?
All of them.
All of them. Okay.
There was predominantly white guys.
Okay.
So I predominantly liked white men, but there was Ben Johnson.
Uh-oh, she's naming folks.
You're right.
That's interesting to me. That's interesting to me that when you have the interracial adoptee, what they end up being attracted to. Because I've talked to some people, unfortunately, that hated themselves because they were black or they looked different.
Yeah, sure.
And so I certainly don't want a black man. or I certainly don't want a Black woman.
Oh,
So, yeah, I've
I
heard
have
that.
different reasons for that, but I have no I
She was like, I'm dating them all.
well, because the pool, I had challenges. The pool was small, like, you know what I mean?
I hear
And
you. I hear you.
so I really didn't care. And I didn't care because I thought families were mixed anyway. I thought people mixed
Well,
anyways.
yeah, because that's all you know. So you're like, well, what is this?
And the
All the
people
Black
around
people
me,
over here and all the Asian people over here. What y'all doing? Come together. That's
you know,
what you. That's
just
so
naturally.
fascinating to me.
I didn't, it
Yeah.
didn't affect me,
So I want to
And
know. Okay, so you meet your sister.
so she comes
Tell
on
me
in.
what life was like for your sister, because you said early on, I wouldn't trade places. What did she go through that you didn't have to go through?
The worst. And not that my mom, my biological mom, was a bad mom,
Sure.
but she was a Haitian mom who was poor, living in little Haiti,
Yeah.
and like lost all her I mean, Jennifer knew of all of her siblings, but none of them were around her. She's like,
Mm,
"You telling me I have siblings and none of them are like, where are they?" You know what I mean?
yeah.
What the heck? And then when she was 16 years old, she was like already out of the house living in France with some like white guy. Like,
I'm sorry. Huh?
I swear. And like
16?
out the house, living how she wanted to live, surviving. But that was her surviving.
Wow. And
That was
so,
her.
and what does she tell you about your mother at
Not
this
much.
point? Uh,
You know, they're very secretive. And I know that we both know, we all know, I think all my siblings know that I got the better end of the deal,
sure.
which is so hard to hear because I was the one adopted,
Sure.
and
Sure.
so,
I get that. I resonate with that.
and I've actually never had this discussion with them about it. But it is quite obvious and it hurts me.
Mm-hmm.
And it just sucks, not to the point where it's enough for me to not, have a relationship,
Sure.
but
Sure.
jealousy, that type of it's hard. Your childhood is everything.
Yeah.
Your childhood is everything.
Everything.
And I went to Maine every summer. I lived in Guilford.
Yeah. I heard you when you said it. I understood it when you said it.
And
Yeah.
and she had to survive, and my brother had to survive.
Had to survive.
So yeah, so we what was the question, where were we going?
Oh, I was just asking about your mom, and you said she didn't tell you a lot.
And so, yeah, so Jen didn't really tell me, what it was like. I don't think she wanted to.
Okay.
And I kind of respected that, because when we actually met, we had different expectations too. So she heard about me this whole time.
Right.
But I
you
didn't
don't
know about
have
her.
anything. Right. You just knew she existed, and that was it.
I didn't even know she existed.
Oh, because she's younger.
Yeah.
That's right.
I didn't know anybody existed. I wasn't even sure if my mother was alive, and I was also told that my father was dead. And so she just showed up. And so she had this expectation of, I'm going to find my sister and we're going to be sisters and everything's going to be
unicorns, rainbows, and ponies.
And I was excited. You know what I mean? But I was a little bit more like,
this is so reversed, because normally it's the adoptee going to find the people. But in this story, the people came and found you.
And I
And
did try and search,
sure,
but
but they're
yeah,
the
but it
ones
was
that succeeded. And
yes.
she's coming with the rainbows, unicorns, and ponies. And you're like, hold on. That is so
Because
interesting. That's,
and it's
yeah, go ahead.
no, and it is because I don't know, I didn't have trust issues, but we all
No,
have trust
but
issues.
when
Like we all
somebody
just
pops up and you're like, hold on, give me a minute. I get it. Give me a minute. Hold on one second.
right.
Let me process
Exactly.
this real quick.
That's it. And we did sisterly things. And I thought it was good, but I think she wanted more. And then the way that I grew up versus how she grew up.
Mm,
And then I think when she realized that my life was like, you know, it started to change her
mm.
attitude towards me.
How so?
Um,
If you want to answer.
yeah, no,
Okay.
it's she. I just like to explain it because it's not like I hold it against her. I completely understand,
Yeah.
why she would feel this way. But she's like, she's just mean to me.
Oh
She's just
no.
so mean to me. She's so mean to me. And I hate to say it. It's so bad. She's just like
Is she
mean.
mean? Or are you being sensitive?
I
And maybe taking perception is everything.
I'm telling you, I have story
Okay.
after, and it just constantly. I'm a very logical person, and I know
Okay.
logical people say that. I get that, but after a while, this isn't new. This is now since 2008. You know what I mean? And there have been so many instances. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. At this
But
point in the game, that's a long time to still be like, quote
I
unquote,
mean, and I
processing.
and I know these things because, for instance, I've always been there for her. I've been at every single graduation, birth, move, you name it, because I grew up with siblings and I know that's how it works. And I love
Ooh,
that. That's how
that is
and
such
so
a no. Let me tell you, you don't even understand. I say it often. When you know how to do family, and you run across somebody that doesn't know how to do family, it's it you get it. You get it, cause I get it, and you're like, oh, they don't know how to do family. They don't know what this is. That's why they move like that. I got to show grace. But it takes you a minute to get there. Oh, mhm.
so I'm not making it up. I know that, and there have been several instances, like I go to Maine every summer. My family, like 30 to 40 of us do this every summer.
Wow, that's amazing.
And it is bougie. It is white as
It sounds
hell.
like a summer in Martha's Vineyard, like that type
It's
of
it's
thing.
better, boo. It's better. It's
Ah,
better. And that's what I'm saying. And not rich, but
rich.
rich.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I was like, please come. Like, my family has been dying to meet you. It's
She
been
passed up an
eight
opportunity to do
years.
that.
8 years it took her
Oh, she
to
finally
meet me.
went though. Okay.
Huh?
I said she
But she
finally did
did.
it.
Yeah.
And
Once. It went great. She blends in. She's not even opposed to, she loves white people. Like, that's not an issue, like
no, that's
that's
not the
sometimes
issue.
an
It's
issue.
you. I get it. Now that you said it the way you said it, I get it. I get it. It's why did you get to go and I had to stay? Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, and she got the looks though. She got a lot of great things, you know. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And I never saw my birth mom give her the credit that she deserved either.
Mm.
I never heard thank you. I never heard good job, Jenny.
So you
I
do
never.
get to meet your birth mom at some point. How
And
long did
so
that take?
not long. So February 2nd, 2008, my sister knocks on my door. And then within, you know, days, we're on the phone with my mom and she's
Okay.
crying.
Sure.
And then July 4th of 2008, we go down, 4th of July weekend, we go down to Miami and I meet my mom for the very first time.
And what was that
And it
like?
was, it was everything. She's an entrepreneur. She was an entrepreneur. She had a studio, her shop, which was a garage with a ton of, you know, racks and random things. And when we went down there, I remember waking up the very first morning and all I hear is me and my sister in our room and my birth mom is in the living room and all I hear is Juju, Juju. And my sister's like, that's you. And I'm like, well, someone got to tell me.
Somebody, right.
So I'm like, what is she yelling? And so we go into the living room together, and she has this suitcase of socks, white, thick socks.
Uh-huh.
It is July 4th in Miami, Florida, honey.
Uh-huh.
Nobody's wearing socks.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, I have clients. I'm like, okay. She came back that night with an empty suitcase and a stack full of cash. And I go, wow, that's my mom. Because I've been in sales my whole life. I've been hustling my whole life.
Now you
And I
see where you
go,
get it from.
damn.
She
Yeah.
sold ice to an Eskimo.
I'm like,
Wow.
gene pool
Wow.
is
It's
strong.
strong. It's strong. DNA
Strong.
doesn't lie. Genes don't lie. All that stuff. It's
You can't escape it.
real. You
And
cannot
that's why I
escape
hate
it.
And that's why I hate when people are like revoking people's black cards. I'm like, trust me, baby, you cannot. I'm like, you can try, but you cannot. And yeah, and so I always felt that she just never, she, I never saw my mother really give that love, you know?
Mm.
And for those people who believe in spirits, I am a very spiritual person, on top of believing in God, but I'm a very spiritual person. And I do believe that we can connect to the higher powers and to people who have passed.
Mm-hmm.
I've had enough conversations and have been given enough evidence to believe that.
Mm-hmm.
So, that being said, I did recently connect with my biological mom, who happened to have passed in 2012.
Okay.
But, you know, I asked her, I go, why? I'm like, I didn't see the love. I'm like, what happened? And she's like, I regret being too strict
Mm-hmm.
with Jenny. And I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense. She's like, I regret being too strict. She's like, that's my biggest regret. And I'm like, yeah, that makes so much sense. You don't feel loved. You feel, you know, there's just so many things.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you know, her actions as we continue to grow and get to know each other, I realized early on, you know, that her life was not easy.
Yeah.
It just wasn't. And it wasn't full of what I
What you
had received.
experienced. Did you
Yeah,
have an
what I experienced.
opportunity to connect with your other siblings ever?
And absolutely. So 2008, February 2008, I meet my sister. July 2008, I meet my mother. And in December of 2008, I meet my full biological brother, the only other human on this earth who shares both parents with me, who
Huh.
is my twin. We are attitude, vibrance. You're going to hear more. But so not only am I going to meet a full sibling, I'm going to meet the man that I grew up believing
Was dead.
was dead.
And who told you that?
On my birth certificate.
Ah.
She cut him out early. She and him did not have that great of a
Sure.
relationship.
So not only are you finding out this man is not dead, but this is him. Oof. What was that like?
And so
Did she
I
ever
go
tell
down
you
there.
that he wasn't dead, or you had to find that out through your sibling?
My birth mother played a few games.
Sure.
At first she was like, "You and Jenny have the same dad." And her dad was dead. And then she was just like, "Actually, Angie's dad is alive."
Okay, girl.
And her brother. You know what I mean? And so like
And where are they? Are they in Miami also?
in the Dominican Republic.
That's right. You said that early on. They're in, okay.
And so they're in the DR. I'm dating somebody at the time. He goes with me. We go down to meet everybody. My cousins, it was a family affair. And this is so great. This is one of my favorite stories like of my life. And so we go down there. We smoke cigars. We go to the hotel. I check in, and my father is a painter.
Okay.
He's a famous painter down in the DR. He's sold his stuff all over the world, and so we get this hotel in downtown Santo Domingo. This is going to be the first time I'm going to meet my father. Me and my boyfriend are upstairs just waiting for the call, and finally the phone rings and he picks up, and the downstairs is just like, "You have a guest here." And so this hotel has these beautiful long stairs, that go up, and I run down these stairs and I'm wearing this beautiful flowing skirt, and I turn around the corner and I flow around, and my brother the night before was trying to teach my dad some English, so that he could say something to me. And so I come down the stairs, I flow around the corner, and I see him standing at the bottom of the stairs. And this man is beautiful, skin perfect, masculine man, dad vibes, you know what I mean? Huge, beautiful smile, like just perfect teeth. And I go, "Papa." And he goes, "My son."
Ah! Girl, you are such a storyteller. That was so vivid for me. And I wasn't ready. You're like, okay, so I'm going to go back up. I'm going to run downstairs again, flow again. And then you tell him what to say for real this time. So this could play out, right?
I was
God
like,
bless his
"I'll
heart.
take it. I'll take
God
it."
bless his heart. He meant well.
I was like, "I'll take it. I'll do it. I'll take one for the team."
Ah.
Um,
That's
yeah,
hilarious. I can see why that's your favorite story.
we laugh about it literally to this day.
Sure.
And,
That's a core memory. Sure.
Yeah, core. Imprinted. And so, we had a great time all around the island and eating food. And we went to his restaurant, and I met one of his other children. He has not stopped having children.
Okay,
He like
yeah. Okay.
4-year-old,
sir.
you know what I mean? And so had lunch. He ate the fish first time I've ever seen this in person. Just ate an entire fish
Off
and
the
pulled out
bone?
everything but the spine. Even the little bones. I'm sitting here. I'm like, oh, hell no. I'm like, I don't belong here. I couldn't. And he just, everything but the spine. And I'm like, this guy. And then I had this camera, as we did, the Nokias back in the day. And had this camera that had every single memory from that trip. And it was the last day. We had gone to my father's village and had seen his apartment, a couple of the paintings he was working on. And he was driving us through the village. And, you know, it was, I think, the first time I'd been out of the country. And so I was like, wow, you know, it was dirt roads and chickens in the,
I've been to
you
the
know,
DR,
and
so yeah.
yeah. And I was just like, wow. And so my father was driving. My boyfriend was in the passenger seat and he had the camera. I was sitting behind my boyfriend. My mother was sitting next to me in the middle. And then my sister was sitting.
Wait a minute. Mama?
Yeah, we were all hanging out. My mom, all of us went to DR. It was
Girl,
a
you left
family
that
affair.
out. You didn't say Mama went.
Oh, it was everybody. Sorry. Mama, cousins, sister, my boyfriend. Oh, yeah, it was everybody.
Oh, wow. Okay, keep going.
But I had already met her.
I know that, but Mama said he was dead, and then she was like, you know what? Come on, let's go to the DR and meet your dad. Girl, wait a minute. What? My bad. I didn't.
No. I didn't specifically say. You're 100% right. You're 100% right. She was there. And she's like, I'm not going to miss this. And what's sad is that she had a stroke 2 months before I met her. So she had a stroke in May. Mm-hmm. I met her in July. So the first, I didn't get to meet her full body.
Yeah.
And she kind of regretted that. But she was like, I'm getting on this plane.
Clearly she was still.
DR.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about this Nokia camera.
And so we were all in this car. And my boyfriend was in the front. And I'm like, it's the last day. And he's recording. And like I said, we had never really traveled. Uh-oh. So we were a little naive.
Yeah.
And he was holding the camera. He had it strapped on his wrist, but he was holding the camera out. We all know where this is going.
I know where this is going.
And swoop.
Yep.
And I went black. Every memory that I had from that trip was on that camera. Because we weren't doing that on cell phones, really.
Right.
At the time.
Right.
Before the car could even stop, me and my boyfriend were out the door, chasing after this thug down the streets, down the alleys of the Dominican Republic.
Girl, you're bold.
That we know nothing about.
You don't know where you are.
And we're like, and he was a semi-pro football player, like almost 300 pounds, just
running.
Would have ran through a freaking wall to get this for me. So he's running after this guy. And this all happened in 30 seconds because it's recorded. I have it. It was all recorded. And so you hear him screaming, you hear me screaming, and then this guy comes all the way around, drops the camera right in front of me, and keeps going. My ex meets him in the alleyway. The thug's brother comes out, starts going after my man. I have my camera. I'm running back to the car. My dad's running towards me, being like, are you? Yeah, what's happening? And again, it only happened 30 seconds. So he's running towards me and I'm like, and so then he comes back. My boyfriend's hand is swollen. It looks freaking broken. I'm like, the last thing we need to do
Let's go to jail.
End up in a DR. No, end up in a DR hospital. Like, no, take it to
No,
jail.
I'm joking. Yeah, right.
Besides going to jail. Because what was so funny is it was my father's village.
Yeah.
You know, he was an elder there. And I was his daughter that nobody had ever. And so before we even left, he spoke to the town elder and was like, they knew who he was. They identified him. And they're like, the problem is in DR, you mess with the tourists, you mess with the money. It is nothing to be played about.
Yeah.
And then you mess with the wrong guy.
Yeah.
You mess with the wrong daughter, you know?
That's
wild. And so I got my camera back, all the memories.
I'm glad you got it all back. All the memories.
Insane. And so, you know, we came home and everything has been, you know, there's a trillion stories. And so we finally, you know, me and my family, I would love to be so much closer. Mm-hmm. And the more that like we talk about that family thing, the more that I try to be family, the more it separated me from them. And in 2010, so 2008, we meet. And now me and Jen, we're going to Boston. You know, I'm seeing her, I'm meeting all the people and so on and so forth. And in 2010, what has been the worst thing to ever happen to Haiti in its history?
Yes, I remember. I know exactly what you're going to say. Mm-hmm.
Happened.
The earthquake.
That earthquake.
Yeah, I remember it very well. That
happened in a couple months into 2010,
mm-hmm,
and I remember, my brother pretty much ran from DR to Haiti because there was little transportation. Everybody was trying to get over, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so he did what he could, and he made it to Haiti. He found his daughter, my niece, mm-hmm. who was living there with her mother, mm-hmm. and she was alive and well, and it was the bravest thing I'd ever really witnessed. And I was like, what can I do? Because I'm like, what can I do? And Facebook was popping at the time.
Right now we're popping.
GoFundMe wasn't a thing.
Right.
And what I did was I started a Facebook group called Saving My Family in Haiti. And I was like, I was watching all of these people donate money to Red Cross and all these random organizations. And I said, no, I'm going to go down to Haiti and I'm going to bring money. And I don't know where this even came from, because that's scary.
Sure.
Like to go down to, you know what I mean? And so somebody randomly, I'm like, this is my goal. David Negron, I'll tell you, a kid that I went to school with, a white kid that I went to school with, messaged me and said, this missions group is going. Here is their information. Contact them. Thank you. Contacted them. Signed right up. Made this Facebook page. I'm like, guys, I'm going to Haiti. If you want your donations to actually go somewhere, send them to me. And I was like collecting them through PayPal and like, mm-hmm. you know, and I put my sister and my brother on it. And I was like, share it. Like, let's do this. Like, this is for family.
Mm. But
crickets.
Sure.
And I just don't have that ego. I didn't care. But they certainly did. They wanted no part of it. They wanted no part of asking people for money for family. And I'm like, this isn't a normal scenario. No one's asking for dinner. Like, you know what I mean? And their community. Yeah. I'm like, nobody You don't want to send your sister. I had people, white people, okay, funded the whole thing. I was getting $500 a clip from some of these people.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to, not one.
I understand that. I'm not surprised to hear it. Let me say that. I'm not surprised to hear it. Let me say that. I want to ask you one final question. My last question for you, I want you to speak to the adoptee that wants to find their family and they are terrified. What advice would you give them?
Nothing can prepare you because you really don't know what to expect. I have a lot of friends who are adopted, and since Ancestry and all these 23andMe's have come out, it's a lot easier, and the process is not as daunting. Like, it took us decades, to connect, where if we did it today, it would be so easy.
Mm-hmm.
But there is no preparing yourself. Every situation is so unique to the individual, how they were raised, their experience as an adoptee versus, not. And I've seen people who absolutely love their new families, and not connect with their new families. So I do always suggest it, despite what you may find out. There's a part of you that becomes complete, for good or for worse.
Mm-hmm.
And that completeness can't be filled any other way than having that experience of either meeting somebody or connecting. So yeah, it's fair to be scared. You should be scared. You should have this apprehensive feeling so that when you do go into it, you're not surprised necessarily by any outcome, because it could go in any direction.
Sure.
I do say hope for the best. I always hope for the best. And because people are more good than bad out in the world.
That's true.
There is more good than bad.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
So, it's definitely worth the risk. And it's closure for a lot of people. It's completeness for a lot of people. Seeing my own eyes, nose, lips, and cheeks could have been enough for me. Just knowing that somebody else looks like me.
Yeah. And
could have been enough.
Yeah.
It could have ended there and I would have been okay. But it is a slippery slope even now. And I love my family, and I know they love me. I do. I know. But it's the communication barrier. Be ready to just really learn how to navigate that for yourself. Don't try and navigate it for anybody else. Don't try to live anybody else's experience. Just try and navigate that for yourself and how you feel about it. Because I could have easily given into the idea of, yeah, let's just be sisters and da-da-da-da-da. And then internally she feels kind of envy. And I'm going all in. So there's a lot of emotions, and it could take a lot of time to get to a place where you even feel comfortable, So go on the journey, though.
Go on the
journey. It's meant to be lived.
Sure.
We're meant to live it. And if you have the opportunity to do it, it could be the best thing that ever happened to you. It was the best thing that's ever happened to me was being adopted and finding my family
and connecting, and
Yeah.
everything that came along with it, good, bad, ugly, all that. It's just something about all of it that comes together, and and then it becomes your story.
And it
That's
becomes your story,
That's it.
who you are.
Who you are.
Absolutely.
That's
Your
part.
ingredients.
Sure. I want to thank you so, so much for coming and telling your amazing, vivid story.
My song.
You, you are such a storyteller, and I love it. But again, thank you so much for coming. And hang on, don't go anywhere. And on that note, bye, family.
Thank you, guys.
Journey on. You need a pie with the good. Oh yeah, what's the one?